Hello everybody and welcome back inside the box for another episode of Gunpla Kitbash with me, Kukamatsu. In this episode we'll be taking that big pile of parts and putting it back together. So, let's jump right in. Okay, it is one of the more exciting parts of the build, in my opinion, the assembly day. Get to see it all sort of come together. It's not going to be the final thing, so I still am going to do weathering and stuff like that, but it's going to be great to see it all back in its final configuration. It's also slightly a nerve-wracking day because all that stuff that I was just putting on with sticky tack before that was temporary is now going to be permanent. I'm going to glue everything that needs to be glued, get it all working. So I was thinking maybe starting with the legs. Now I just have this big array of parts here and I have to figure out how it all goes back together. It's almost like doing the build all over again. So I will have the instructions available, and but in addition to that, I also have lots of photographs of the assemblies as I had them before I took them apart, and that's something I definitely recommend if you're going to do this kind of stuff, is document it as you go so that there's no question as to how it goes back together again. One of the great things about Instagram has been just that I'm more likely to photograph my work as I go, in terms of in progress photographs. I used to be pretty bad at doing that because it means stopping and remembering to take photographs as you go, but Instagram has really helped with that. So let's start with the legs and see how it goes. Okay, so even in the first set of parts, I already ran into sort of a typical problem. I didn't look at the instructions, I just started putting it together and noticed that the piece from there was missing. And where is that? Well, what does it look like? So I pulled out the instructions and found the part. There's this one here, and then spent about 20 minutes looking for it, only to discover that it's on the end of this part already. So these are some of the difficulties of taking these things apart, making them look different, and then putting them back together again. Even when you have the instructions, it doesn't always help, but definitely having the photo helped just to verify that there was supposed to be something in there. Now another challenge is after you got paint on these, they fit together much more tightly than they did before, so they're more difficult to get apart. So you really have to be careful if you have to take them apart again. But in a perfect world, I would have I would have looked at it a little more closely before sticking it together. There we go, got it apart. So what I was supposed to do was put this in first. Now there's a left and a right to these guys, so I better make sure that I get that correct as well. There we go. Get that one on there, and then that one fits over top. And I think I put it on backwards. Yep, I put it on backwards, because that piece should be centered on that piece. And I also think I need to paint that to look like metal. I'm definitely making it hard on myself this morning. First one out. Whoa, first one out of the gate, and I'm already making mistakes. Not only do I take this apart once, I'm going to take it apart twice. Now, if I knew that I was going to be taking this apart again after painting it, then I would actually take a little bit of isopropyl alcohol and just clean off the pegs and the hole so that it would slip on and off a lot more easily. But I wasn't expecting to take it apart again, so I didn't do that. So I'm going to do this properly and actually look at the instructions for each piece as I go along so that I don't screw it up again. All right, got it right that time. And that one did have a little bit of metal painted on it already, so that one's fine. I'm just going to put a little bit of metal paint, the gunmetal paint on that one as well, so that they both have a little bit of shine. But let's just finish this foot off. There we go. And that's the part that I have instructions for. Just imagine what it's going to be like when we get to the part where I don't have any instructions. The customized part. And as I was doing that, I was looking at the color that I've chosen for these piston parts, and I don't think these blues go very well together. Curious how that shows up on camera, but in real life it's just the wrong blue. Now I do feel at this part of the process where I'm excited about getting assembled, I feel a strong urge to just keep going and leave it as it is, but I think it's one of those things that will stand out forever in my mind as I look at it as not being right, and and it won't take too long to sort of solve that now. It'd be better to get it solved before I put them onto the kit, rather than getting them on there, not liking them, and having to fix them after. So I'm going to take a little break and just repaint these. I just hand painted them in the first place, so I can hand paint over top of them, but I'm just going to change the color to a slightly different blue so that I think it works better with the other ones. And at the same time, I'll do a little bit of gunmetal on that one just to get that working as well. Okay, so I've repainted those with a different blue. I used this, which is Field Blue XF50 from Tamiya, and I think it goes much better with the existing blues in this kit. The other blue that I had on there I use quite a lot for this application because I just like it, but I think it works better when it's the only blue in the kit. It's not working with other blues, which it does have to do in this one. So I think this blue works better with that. So they don't stand out as much, but they do I think work better overall with the colors in the kit. So I had a little think while I was painting those pistons, because I've already made a couple of mistakes in just the first part of assembly here, and that's to me usually an indication of something else that's going on. Maybe I'm not giving it the attention it deserves or something like that. Well, I think what it is that I sort of had a plan to do the assembly, then do a top coat and do the decals all today, and it's occurring to me that that's just too much work, and it's causing me to feel a little bit stressed out about just getting through all of it, and that's why I'm skipping steps and making mistakes. So I've decided that I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do the decals today. I'm just going to do the assembly, and this is it is the most enjoyable part, really, in a lot of ways. It's all of the parts are ready to go, putting them back together and seeing what it looks like all painted. So might as well take the time to enjoy it rather than rush through it just to get to the next step and get it done. So with that in mind, I'm going to continue with the assembly. I don't think that's an uncommon thing to happen when we're doing this kind of stuff, especially people who do it for competition. That's if there's a deadline like that, then it's really tough to just sort of take the time and enjoy it if you're just trying to get it done. But I guess it all depends on why you're doing this kind of work and what your end goal is, and also if you're the kind of person who needs the deadline to get it done. That it's not uncommon that people need that kind of motivation. I definitely benefit from a deadline. I used to try and do videos in advance and have a whole bunch of ready to go. But then now I just do them. What you see in those videos is what I did this week. So I basically put some time aside on Sundays to work on this kind of stuff. Actually, it's most of Sunday, a lot of the times. And then, I do the video editing on the same day, and then I release on Tuesdays. So it is very satisfying when it is actually something that I built and it just all snaps together. But of course, not everything can snap together. Some things will need to be glued. Like, for example, these side panels. They do stay on, but they're not super tight. So I'm just going to put a little bit of glue on there. And I'm just using the clear super glue this time. I'm not going to use the black stuff in this case because it's not for filling. I think the clear stuff does actually work better for this kind of application because it sets faster. Possibility of scratching or damaging the paint at this stage is pretty high, so just need to be very careful as I go along here. I'm not making more work for myself. Now let's get this part sorted out. This was one of those ones that I left. Basically what I need is to get that in there and then get this glued on the other side. The only thing is I don't want to stop it from moving, so I have to be very careful about how I glue it on the other side. Just enough glue to make it stick. I think this is a good opportunity to try out the kicker and just see how it affects the paint. I'm specifically using one that doesn't have any alcohol in it so that Some of them you spray on there and it just wipes out the paint. Thought this, since this is a back area, it'd be a good one to test just to see how it reacts to this stuff, this Insta-Set. Okay, well that looks like it's set on there nice. Now I need to figure out the other side, which involves these pieces and these ones. Always good to test fit it before you commit to gluing, because you discover any fitment problems if you do that. It's much less stressful than if you're just putting the glue on there and going for it. But I think that's going to work. Oh, that piece did not glue very well. So what happened there is, and this does happen sometimes, is the paint broke off and so the glue didn't stick. So what I might have to do is in that area just clear off the paint and give it a better surface to stick to. Sometimes it's not critical because it's, you know, if you have enough surface area, it's not going to matter. You wouldn't be able to pull off that much paint. But in this case, it's such a small spot that it's easy for it to tear the paint off. It may mean touching up with a bit of paint later just to cover up anything that I'm scraping off now. But it's more important to get the good hold on there. Insta-Set seemed to be fine, didn't affect it in any negative way in terms of the paint job, so I feel comfortable using that. I'll just give that a minute to set. While that happens, I'm just going to continue putting on these other parts that I know are just the original kit parts. Don't need to be glued. Just being careful not to jostle that area that I was just letting set. Okay, that's feeling pretty good, so let's try this again. So that's going to go on there. It's basically going to slot down in there. So if you just leave it like this, get some glue on these surfaces. And just slot it down in there. I think we've got all the parts on there now, so I'm going to let that sit and make sure the glue is completely on there, and then I'll just do the other leg and we'll have them both ready to go. Okay, got the second one done, and just going to check this first one to make sure it's working. There's a lot of pressure in this area. The way this slides, it just is a lot of, you got to put a lot of pressure on it for it to work, but it seems like the piston itself is doing pretty good. Everything's staying where it's supposed to be, so I think that's working out pretty well. So there we go, with the legs are done. I think they're looking pretty cool. I think the next one is going to be the torso. It's the other complicated one, so might as well get that done. Now I kind of have a feel for it with the legs. I can tackle the more difficult torso. Okay, well, there's certain pieces we know on here that are straightforward, like the neck. I realized I had forgotten to paint that one metal, so I just stopped and went and did that quickly. Definitely stress levels are high when I'm doing this, making sure that I'm getting it right. I mean, nothing is a perfect fit, obviously, because it's all custom, so just, you know, getting it sitting the way I had it originally is just a little bit anxiety inducing. Because if you get it wrong, then, you know, a lot of times it means repainting, and I would really like to avoid getting the airbrush out just for this. So just trying to do it and get it sort of at least stabilized so it makes all the other parts a bit more obvious. Everything just sort of needs to be just right for it all to work out. So just making sure, double checking, triple checking, making sure that I don't screw it up. And I am discovering that even though I did take pictures as I went, I could have been a bit better in documenting the exact details of this stuff, where everything goes. So that's something to keep in mind for the future. I find that as the stress levels go up, I'm much less likely to effectively sort of commentate what I'm doing. So apologies for that. This may end up being more of a montage or a time lapse than a actual description of what I'm doing. Perhaps I'm going to go for it. I think there's nothing else I can do but just start sticking some glue on here and hope it works out. There's one particular spot that is just perfect. And it's a matter of finding that spot and then having enough glue points for it to stay there. Go for the other side as well. I'm having one of those days where I'm knocking everything over, and it's not the kind of day you want to be doing this sort of work when that kind of stuff is happening, when you're feeling clumsy. But today is the day. I'm doing it, so not much I can do, I guess. Okay. Sigh of relief. I think that's the hard part. I hope that's the hard part. Everything looks so different when it's painted and different colors than it used to be, so I'm I'm sort of trying to find the bits that I used to know so well. Those ones. Okay, I think I have the whole torso together now. I'm not gonna lie, that was stressful. I think the main reason was because there were just so many pieces that had to go on that were custom, so nothing was really stable, and so it's difficult to glue it with confidence until something is stable. So my technique was just to try and get one thing going and then build from there. But even then, it was pretty difficult. I do see some areas like that where the glue is pulled off the side and pulled out the paint, so I'm going to have to do some repair in there. I guess the other reason it was stressful is because of that kind of thing. You know, I know how much work I've put into this, shaping and sanding and priming and painting and everything. And so when something like that happens, then it ends up being just it feels like a few steps backward, and I don't want to take backward steps. I want to move forward with this project. So that just puts the extra pressure on to get it right the first time. But overall, I think it's looking pretty good, and definitely that was by far the hardest piece. I say that I haven't done the other pieces yet, but I assume that's going to be the hardest piece of them all. So I'm pretty happy with how that turned out, and so now I'm just going to go and do the rest of the kit and see how that goes. Okay, well, that turned out to be a much longer process than I was anticipating. It's mid-afternoon now, so it's been almost a full day of work on that because I started pretty early. But I do have everything sort of together now, and it's all looking pretty good. As I showed you before, a couple little repairs to do in terms of paint, but I mean, overall not too bad. Considering what I had to do to put some of the stuff together, it held up pretty well. And so I'm pretty pleased with that. Nothing major to worry about. After I do those few paint touch-ups, I will do one more thing off camera, which is I'm going to airbrush Tamiya X22 clear over everything. That'll give me kind of a gloss finish. Not the final finish that I want, but it will set me up well for doing the decals. I don't know how I thought I was going to get decals done again as well today. Like that in itself is quite a big process if you're doing a lot of them. So glad that I made that decision early on to stick with just assembling today, because it turned out to be a lot of work. I was a little bit worried about the dark color on the torso section, because it just seemed like a lot of dark, but I think once you get all of this white in there, then it looks pretty good. So we'll see that when it's together. Overall, stressful day, but in the end, successful, and I'm happy with how everything turned out. Thank you very much for watching. That is the end of this week's episode. If you enjoyed the video, I'd appreciate a like on the way out, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.